You won't believe what happened between my neighbors. A story with a crazy twist. Hey everyone, I need to tell you about the wildest thing that happened in my neighborhood. At first I thought it was just regular suburban drama, something you'd forget by next week. But let me tell you, this story has twists I didn't see coming, and I was right in the middle of it all. So, here's the setup. Two families live a few doors down from me. Let's call them the Carters and the Bennetts. Now the Carters are your classic perfect family. You know the type. They've got the nice house, the shiny cars, and they throw the best summer pool parties. Everyone knows them. Then there are the Bennetts. They're kind of new to the neighborhood, pretty low-key. The dad's an artist, the mom's a writer, and their son Jake is this super quiet kid who's always sketching. They're not the barbecue and small talk type, but they seem nice enough. At first I thought they'd get along just fine. But oh no, I was so wrong. It all started over something really small, like ridiculously small. The Carters had their annual pool party, and for some reason, they didn't invite the Bennetts. I thought maybe they just forgot since the Bennetts were new, but turns out the Bennetts didn't see it that way. They thought it was personal, like the Carters were purposely trying to keep them out. And then, things started escalating. One day Mrs. Bennett found her rose bush completely trampled, and guess whose kids were seen running through the yard earlier? Yup, the Carter kids. Mrs. Bennett wasn't having it. She told a couple of neighbors, and word got around fast. You could feel the tension every time those two families walked past each other. Here's where it gets juicy. One night, the Carters' golden retriever vanished. They were freaking out, running around the neighborhood calling its name. Everyone joined the search party, except the Bennetts. Then, hours later, Jake shows up with the dog, saying he found it near their backyard. Now, I don't know about you, but that felt suspicious. Was Jake just being helpful, or did he know more than he was letting on? The Carters definitely seemed to think the latter. They didn't say it outright, but you could tell they weren't buying his story. And then the real weirdness began. The Carters started finding strange things around their house. Doodles scratched into their driveway, motion lights turning on randomly, even creepy noises at night. Meanwhile, the Bennetts found anonymous notes in their mailbox. Stuff like, "You don't belong here," and "Mind your own business." The neighborhood was buzzing. People started taking sides, some with the Carters, others with the Bennetts. And me? I was just trying to figure out what the heck was going on. The Carters thought they lived in the perfect neighborhood. Friendly faces, quiet streets, and no drama. But behind those picket fences, things were far from ordinary. On a cold Friday evening, the Carters decided to go out for dinner, leaving their cozy home empty. Unbeknownst to them, someone had been waiting for this exact moment. A shadow slipped into their house through the back door, carrying a bag filled with bizarre items, muddy boots, fake threatening notes, and even a jar of dead bugs. The intruder moved quickly, planting the items to make it look like someone else was trying to sabotage the Carters. But just as they were finishing up, headlights swept across the driveway. The Carters were home early. Hearing the garage door open, the intruder froze. There was no time to sneak out. Frantically looking for a hiding spot, they did the unthinkable. They climbed into the chimney. It was tight, filthy, and a last resort, but it was better than getting caught. The family entered their home, immediately noticing something strange. Muddy footprints led from the back door to the living room where a jar of bugs sat on the coffee table. A crumpled note reading, "This is just the beginning," was left on the counter. "Did someone break in?" Mrs. Carter asked, her voice trembling. Mr. Carter grabbed a flashlight and started searching the house. As the Carters searched, they began hearing odd noises, faint coughing, a muffled sneeze. At first, they thought it was coming from the attic. But when Mr. Carter passed by the fireplace, he noticed something odd, a trickle of soot falling from the chimney. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Mrs. Carter nodded. "You don't think someone's in there, do you?" Convinced they had a thief trapped, the Carters decided to flush them out. Mr. Carter lit a bundle of dried herbs and waved it near the fireplace opening, hoping the smoke would force the intruder to reveal themselves. It worked. A loud coughing fit erupted from inside the chimney, followed by a panicked voice yelling, "Stop, I'm stuck!" The family stood frozen as the figure inside wriggled and struggled. Finally, with a shove and a cloud of soot, the intruder tumbled down, landing in the fireplace in a heap. It was none other than Mrs. Green, their sweet, elderly neighbor. Covered in soot and clutching her bag of incriminating items, Mrs. Green tried to explain herself. I was just checking for chimney drafts," she stammered, clearly flustered. But the evidence told a different story. The muddy boots, the fake notes, and the jar of bugs spilled out of her bag. The Carters realized this wasn't just a burglary. Mrs. Green had been behind all the strange incidents in the neighborhood. When pressed, Mrs. Green finally confessed. Her plan was to create chaos between the Carters and their other neighbors, the Bennetts. She wanted both families to feud and eventually move out so she could buy their properties at a bargain price. "I just wanted more space for my rose garden," she muttered, hanging her head in shame. The police arrived soon after, taking Mrs. Green in for questioning. The neighborhood was stunned. How could the sweet cookie-baking Mrs. Green be the mastermind behind such elaborate schemes? The Carters and the Bennetts, once suspicious of each other, ended up becoming friends. They even started a neighborhood watch to make sure nothing like this happened again. As for Mrs. Green, she sold her house and moved away, leaving behind her dreams of a grand rose garden and a neighborhood that would never forget the time she got caught red-handed in the chimney. Moral of the story: trust is good, but a chimney inspection might reveal more than just soot.